Get this adjusted just right. It's Sunday afternoon, just 1:10, 1:15, something like that. And we're going to have a short conversation. Been trying to keep them about 20 minutes long. I think it's more 20 minutes, half an hour, more engaging when it's shorter. Um, More people, I think, want to check it out and see what's being said versus um, the longer, more meandering conversations. Now, when I have some burpee community friends pop in, that's a little different because the conversation always takes an interesting turn. Never know where it's going to go. But generally, we have some great discussions on not just burpees, but fitness in general, diet, supplements, all kinds of stuff. Um, Generally, going live, I've been talking quite a bit on yoga, which has been a lifelong interest, lifelong passion. It's what spurred me into meditation, becoming a meditation teacher, breath work, becoming a breath work coach, um, and having these conversations really. When I think of teaching meditation, when I think of teaching pranayama, excuse me, I think of teaching yoga. Of course, if I say I'm a yoga teacher, people immediately ask me about a asana that they're having difficulty with. Um, how do I do a headstand? How do I do shoulder stand? How do I do this? Or how do I correct this? And my answer is generally, I'm not that kind of yoga teacher. Um, what I teach is the aspects of yoga, meditation, and breath work, which is similar as to those who are um, yoga instructors in the West. What they're really teaching is just that, the asanas of yoga, but not the complete aspect of yoga. Even if they include a little bit of meditation or a little bit of breath work, there's a great science behind those two things. And of course, all of it has to be backed by the ethics of yoga, the foundation of yoga that we were talking about before, the yamas and the niyamas. And maybe we will get in um, the next, bring those up. The next one. I think we've covered all five of the yamas um, and the first three of the niyamas, and the fourth one, tapas, is my favorite one. Although I'm not sure we're supposed to have favorite ethical practices, but I do, because the tapas are passion. They're um, the discipline that we apply towards ourselves. Some might say austerity, which is a awesome word, but I'm sure I'll screw it up several times in this conversation. We could also call it a burning enthusiasm. I believe that's what Deepak Chopra described it in his most recent book on yoga that came out January of this year. And I love that burning enthusiasm. It's through that, the burning enthusiasm, that excess, things that don't belong to this practice are burned in that fire of enthusiasm. So we're left with just that endeavor, whatever it might be. And our absorption within that endeavor, that passion of that endeavor, that austerity, is what brings us to union, which again is the entire purpose of God. And the union that we're seeking, I know some people might not appreciate the word seeker or seeking, but in some way, you have to seek, or you never reach that conclusion that there is no seeker, no seeking. That which you thought is what you already are. So when it's through that burning enthusiasm, the absorption within whatever it is that we are working on. Hey, Duncan, nice to see you. Welcome back from your vacation, by the way. from your holiday. I'm talking about ethical foundations of yoga. I'm going to bring this around, and I think um, you'll have an appreciation for this topic. The There's 10 ethical principles, the foundation of yoga. 5 yamas, which are sort of our personal code of conduct type of the best description of it. And then there's 5 niyamas, which are a little bit broader. I've covered the other ones. The third one in the niyamas is tapas, which I was describing as discipline or austerity, or some liken it to a burning enthusiasm. And that it's through that burning enthusiasm for what we're doing, that singular focus, that we come to the union, which again, that's what yoga is all about. We come to the union of self and God, self and the universe, self and selflessness, however we want to describe it. We reach that single point of attention. You can get there in a set of burpees with that burning enthusiasm. You can get there playing squash. You can get there anything that you are so committed to that you reach that single pointed absorption in that movement, in the motion. And that's all there is. The universe has narrowed down to that single point. Duncan asks, is there an aspect of routine? I think so. Let me know a little more fully, a little more deeply what you, how you mean that by, and then we'll sort of expand from there. You can take that. This is where I know a lot of people will say, I don't meditate because this activity is my meditation. What they really mean is this activity is my enthusiasm, or this activity is my relaxation, or it's my distraction. You got to have that that right intent. I would say Duncan asks, does it have to be a burning desire? And I would take away the word desire and say burning enthusiasm. That when you're doing it, you are just engrossed in the doing itself to the point where you realize, or when there's a realization, that there's no actual doer, there's just the activity. Which is another way of saying karma yoga. In the Bhagavad Gita, when the archer, the Prince Arjuna, couldn't fight on the battlefield because he had family on both sides, he threw his arms down and said, I can't fight because whatever I do, someone will be hurt. Someone I care about, someone I love will be hurt. And Krishna said, to be free of karma from the activity, give it all up to me, to Krishna, to God. And again, you can use whatever, the universe. Duncan asks, always. And I think yes. I think always, because you're approaching it with that intent. That doesn't mean that everything that you do, every set of burpees or every game of squash has to be that burning enthusiasm. But what keeps drawing you back is knowing the potential of that burning enthusiasm when it takes hold and you're just fully surrendered. Surrendered might be an even better description than enthusiasm, I think. And Duncan asks, do you perform the burpees with burning enthusiasm or routine? That's an interesting question. I actually love that question. I'm going to bring that around to, it's an odd way of bringing it around. Somerset Maugham, the playwright and author, wrote one of my all-time favorite books, The Razor's Edge. just put me on the path of yoga and meditation in my teens. Just an incredible book. Anyway, Somerset Maugham was asked by a group of students, creative writing students, is it better to, and I might have the wording mixed up a little bit, it's been a while since I've read it, is it better to write when you're inspired or by a routine, by appointment? And his answer is it was always better to write by appointment, or it's always better to write by inspiration. But fortunately, inspiration shows up at his desk every morning at 9 a.m. So to answer that question, it's always a routine. But burning enthusiasm shows up during that routine because I know that it can happen. I set the intent. I'm not the one who does it. Put it that way. I'm not the one who can even do it. It's beyond me. Hi, Mocha. But what I can do is start. I can do a rep. I can do 2 reps. I can do 3 reps. Sometimes I might have to force myself to get those reps. On a good day, on a magical day, another, why they say austerity, another way of it being austerity, that burning enthusiasm takes over. I'm not the one who can do it or even plan for it to happen. I can just show up and put myself in the situation where it does happen. Duncan says that burning enthusiasm is part of the routine, I guess. It can be. But it happens, again, we don't make it happen. It happens by grace. What we can do is just show up. That's the routine. We show up every morning, 9 a.m., as Somerset Maugham said. Mocha asks, is something's burning? Or she doesn't ask, but something's burning. Yes, I was talking about ethical foundation of yoga, the 5 Niyamas, which are I hate using the term ethical, but that seems to describe it most. Practices that we do, principles that we adhere to. And one of them being Tapas, which is that it's a discipline or burning enthusiasm. Austerity. These are broad terms. It sort of gets the point, but not absolutely so. But it's anything that we commit to. But again, we don't make that magic happen. We don't make that burning enthusiasm appear. It happens through that, as Duncan was saying, through the routine. If you show up every day and you give yourself to something, eventually that magic will happen. That's how it happens with yoga. Yoga seems like a routine. You're stretching, you're following the breath, you're doing this, you're doing that. But sometimes you disappear. Sometimes there's just the motion. There's just the breath. And yet there's no one there moving. There's no one there breathing. There is just that. You don't know when it's going to happen. You can't plan for it to happen. But what you can do is say, 11 a.m. is my yoga time. And that's the invitation. That 4:30 a.m. in the morning is my writing time. 4 a.m. is my first yoga practice. 4:30 is my writing time. I'm inviting inspiration. I'm inviting magic into my life. Through that, that's when the burning enthusiasm takes place. When it takes place. It's not up to me. Some days it doesn't happen. But sometimes those words just come to me. And again, I'm not even thinking them. I'm not the one who's being creative. Creativity is working through me. Sometimes when I'm doing burpees, those reps are just flying by and I'm almost a witness to the action of burpees. I'm not there in the body doing the reps. I'm everywhere. If you can see my hands, I'm making crazy gestures. I'm everywhere as witness to those repetitions, but it doesn't happen all the time. That's where the discipline comes in. You show up for the discipline. I'm sure, Duncan, that you've, on the squash court, there's been moments where you perform beyond what you thought was your present capabilities. Everything just happened perfectly, even if it was just for one swing of the racket, one return of the ball. It's a squash ball, right? I've been meaning to look up squash on YouTube to get a better idea, as well as snookers, because Barefoot Burpees talked about snookers. But sometimes, yeah, something just happens. Here's another example from Mocha. Her and I did a 50K in a very, very, very warm, hot conditions. It was called Beyond the PR. It was on an extremely remote, very hilly, relentlessly hilly course. We were entering into a long sweep through the woods with a big climb up a waterfall, vertical climb, actually. And we got to an aid station before we went down that river corridor. And at the aid station, they said, Mocha, you don't look so good. On your way back, if you don't look any better, we're worried you might be getting dehydrated. You're not going to make the cutoff. Just basically, she didn't look good. If you don't look better on your way back, and I believe this was at least a 6-mile stretch, and there was no aid station in between. You went in, you turned around, you came back. And they said, if we don't look better, we're going to pull you from the race. For her safety. That's what, that's what they do. It's their discretion. It's not just for the runner's safety, it's for the safety of the entire race, to keep something bad from happening. Somewhere from that point to when she made it back, there was a complete turnaround in her fitness, in her emotional, in her mental. Something just clicked. She couldn't tell you what it was. She couldn't say, I did this and this happened. But when she got back, same aid station, they said, you look like a different runner. You don't look like the same one who started off down here. And they let her go on, and we finished the race. It was tough, but something during that down and back just clicked. So that's the discipline. She had to put herself there for that something to happen. You got to show up on the squash court for that to happen. You got to show up at the desk to write for that to happen. You got to show up on the burpee mat or the yoga mat for that to happen. But you're not the one that makes it happen. You're the one that shows up. And then when that magic appears, you vanish. As they say in the Bhagavad Gita and the Tao Te Ching, there's no doer. You're not the one doing it. You're the one it's being done through. However that happens. I'm not the one to tell you how that happens because I don't think it can be told. The magic that can be described is not the true magic. As it says in the Tao Te Ching, the Tao that can be told is not the true Tao. And it's all the Tao. So when I think about how I started this conversation and where I ended up, I'm not exactly sure how I got here. But to bring it full circle, when I think about being a yoga teacher, this is what we talk about. Not heavily relying on the asanas. Not being a fitness instructor, which is a perfectly fine thing to be. But you're either using yoga as a fitness tool, the yoga asanas, or you can be doing yoga. Maybe you can do both. I don't know. But for me, my focus is on yoga. And in that, the poses, the postures, the asanas is an aspect, a great aspect, one I really love, deeply appreciate, and I'm going deeper and deeper. There is a pose that I wrote this morning, halasana, which is the plow pose. You go up in a shoulder stand and your legs come behind you and touch the floor. And I can do a version of that, but I cannot do that deeply in the way that truly expresses the pose itself, in a way that truly opens up the energy centers in the back and allows that light to flow through the spine, opens up the chakras, opens up the light body, the subtle body. The reason I can't do that, I actually don't know. I suspect, as I was practicing it this morning, a memory of as a kid in gym class, and I was in elementary school, maybe first grade, being taught how to do a forward roll, which I could do and had fun, and then a backwards roll, which I couldn't do. And I balked and I was a little scared, and my gym teacher kept forcing it. And finally he took me and said, just roll backwards. And my neck snapped. Heard this loud crack. Didn't break anything, but everyone rushed because they thought, oh man, something bad happened. And I sat there stunned, a little out of breath. Gym teacher was shaking me. All the teachers gathered around, all the kids gathered around, everyone looked. I think that memory, that cellular memory of that moment, that fear, is in my body. And as I try to do that pose, it's locking me up. So, and that's a good thing. It's not a good thing that it happened, but it's a good thing that now I get to work through that fear. I get to release it little by little. I just focus on one aspect of the pose. I get my feet up. I get back on my shoulders. I stretch little, a little, a little, a little. My feet have not touched the floor yet. I can do that posture in an adequate manner, but again, not the full way of which I want to express it. So that's why I keep working on it. And it's good to have that fear. So I show up. I have a burning enthusiasm to get that posture right. However, I can't just go about it. This is a technical term. It's a yogic term. I can't go about it willy-nilly. It has to be a discipline. What I suspect, at some point, something will give way. The fear will subside. And again, it won't be me doing it. I won't be the one that says, now let go of the fear. Something will happen. Things will be let go of. There'll be no doer. And that pose will click. I suspect. But all I can do is show up. Give myself to the practice. Give myself to the discipline. The burning enthusiasm isn't always in the doing itself. It's in the wanting to be there when that magic happens. Mocha says, but I thought you liked willy-nilly. I like Willy. That didn't sound right. Let's back out of this conversation completely before it goes totally downhill. I should have said I like Nilly and left Willy alone, but it's too late now. So that's the burning enthusiasm. It's not always saying, I'm going to get these reps. I'm going to hit this number. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. It's just wanting to be there. Burning desire is wanting for that magic to happen and setting yourself up, opening to it. Here I am. Whatever happens, that's the lesson from the Bhagavad Gita. That's the lesson of Karma Yoga. It's yours. This is for the universe. Work through me to the point where there is no me, where me disappears and there's just the action itself. Just Krishna, as they would say in the Bhagavad Gita. So that's what I'm working on. That's the type of yoga that I think of. All of those aspects. The 5 yamas, the 5 niyamas, pranayama, breath work. Breath work for me is so completely fascinating that I can change my physiology with just a few breaths. I can lower my heart rate. I can lower my blood pressure, sometimes up to 10 points or more, just by practicing a series of breaths. I can get my mind in that state where it's ready to meditate, or that I can give myself to the postures just by the breath. I can put myself in the fight or flight, in the sympathetic nervous state, or I can put myself in the rest and restore parasympathetic nervous state, just by my breath. That's yoga. The breath is used as an instrument for something greater than ourselves, that small self, the greater self. Yamas, niyamas, pranayama, first three limbs of yoga. Asanas, fourth limb. But asanas is a limb. It's not the full thing of yoga. When you go to a yoga class, they might throw in a few, generally speaking, not all. They might throw in a few Sanskrit phrases. They might have some breaths. Generally, they teach you how to do the yogic breath and ujjayi breathing, that deep ocean breathing. But other than that, and then they'll have you sit in the corpse pose, and that will be your ending meditation. But you got to dive neck deep into the whole aspect of yoga. Moga asks, what does yama translate to? And I don't believe it translates to anything. It's its own thing. The best that we can do is give descriptions of what it is, which is why, we say ethics, but it's not really ethics. Or we say austerities, but it's not really that. It's what we practice. The yamas are, let's see, some people call them restraints. Yamas can be translated to restraints, but that doesn't get to the depth of what it actually is, because as we've talked about with all of the yamas and the niyamas, that they aren't so much restraints. Isn't things that you can do, although it's translated into the negative. Ahimsa is translated into non-violence and non-harming, but it's so much deeper than non-harming. It's a way of being. It's who we actually are in essence. So I've often found that Sanskrit to English translations don't really seem to fit fully. And so we get these other type of translations, as you've seen with the karma, which would be translated into action or motion, as in being punishment, justice, retribution. On the other hand, niyama is often translated as in more positive light, our duties, our obligation, observances. So I like that description much better than the restraints, especially when, like brahmacharya, which is the third yama, which is often translated as sexual celibacy. When again you take it deeper and deeper, it's a means of conserving our energy, not just practicing abstinence, not just practicing celibacy. You can conserve your energy and still be non-celibate. You can still be practicing that yama and not be celibate, but it's how you do it that counts. So again, we always got to go deeper and deeper. The deeper we get, the deeper we find it goes, and there's no limit to how deep it goes. So Yeah, it's these conversations that I love having about yoga. I can't come here. I can't come here and claim to be a yoga teacher because I feel when I talk to you guys, I'm a yoga student and we're exploring these aspects together. Um, the best that I can do is sort of serve as a guide as we dive into this subject and we take it back and forth. Mocha has great comments and questions. Duncan has great comments and questions. When Barefoot Burpees is here, and everyone else always have, it always goes deeper and deeper, which I appreciate. As well, it makes me realize how much there is to keep realizing. I was going to say it helps me realize how much there is to learn, but when we're talking about these yamas and niyamas, it's not even like we're learning. We're realizing, we're remembering, we see how deep it is. There's just no endpoint at all. Mocha says, a true teacher knows that he is an internal student. I agree, 100%. I mean, the whole Suzuki Roshi's book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, uh, and in Zen, specifically Korean Zen, they tell you to start with the I don't know mind, because that's where you're going to end. You end with the I don't know mind. If you think you know, you're right back at the beginning of the Tao. The Tao that can be known is not the true Tao. The Tao that can be told is not the true Tao. And yet, it's the best that we can do. In Course in Miracles, uh, it's said that words are but symbols twice removed from the actuality of isness, of existence. And yet they're important. They're what we use to point. All I'm offering here, pointers. Sometimes they're good pointers, sometimes they're fair pointers, sometimes they miss the mark entirely. The Zen saying is the teacher points at the moon, the student looks at the finger, and so the moon looks like a finger. If you give someone a pointer, don't take it as a literal truth, take it as what it is. It's pointing towards that essence, the suchness, the isness. So I'm at the 33-minute mark, and I said I'm usually going to keep the talk somewhere around 20 minutes, 30 minutes, unless it's particularly engaging, which it has been, thanks to Mocha and Duncan, which I very much appreciate. Duncan, I hope I sort of made that point, or I pointed in that direction of the tapas, that discipline, the burning enthusiasm, that it's not the burning enthusiasm of what we do all the time. It's knowing that it's there and giving ourselves to it for it to happen completely on its own. That we do the discipline for the burning enthusiasm to take its place, to run its course. And that's how it works. So, let's end it here. Again, Duncan, thank you very much. Mocha, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate the questions and the insights that you've offered as well. And that's it for today. Thanks. You guys have a good one.